Because I think as you can see from the area that we're in today, in traversing this amazing catchment, that it's very diverse. And I'm going to share this very brief presentation with my councillor colleague, John Sunkel. And what I just wanted to do at the very start was just set a little bit of a context for Canterbury and what we're trying to do here in Canterbury. And we've got some tremendous advantages and some tremendous disadvantages of being in Canterbury. And one of the things that really sets Canterbury apart is the fact that we've got the Southern Alps. We're in a westerly airstream, and so we have a beautiful wet west coast that can get metres of rain. We have a rain shadow, so that although we may get, that tends to be much, much drier in the east coast. It's exacerbated by the fact that with the northwest winds, the wind flow coming over and dropping as it rises, it's losing about a degree as it loses the rain. As it comes over, it can increase in its way down by 2 degrees, and so you get this lovely hot wind. And so you get evapotranspiration, and you can become very dry very, very quickly. And I guess the other thing that makes the Canterbury Plains very unique is that this was formed with the last ice age, and so this is the weathered remnants of the Southern Alps. So without the ice age pushing the gravel from the Southern Alps into the Canterbury Plains wouldn't exist. And as a consequence of that, we've actually got most of the Canterbury Plains is gravel. So very porous, and less porous as you get more towards the sea, where the soils become heavier. The wonderful thing that we have in Canterbury is that because of the Southern Alps, and I'll show you a diagram in a couple of slides, we have these amazing rivers from the bottom of our Takiwa, the Waitaki, Rangitata, Rakaia, Waimakariri, and then to the Huranui, Waio, and Clarence to the north. And all of their catchment is in the Southern Alps and capturing all of that west coast rain. And so we have these massive rivers coming through Canterbury that provide us a huge resource of water. But we're challenged on the Canterbury Plains where we're gravel between the rivers, and the fact that it's in gravel, and so our hill-fed rivers, like some of the Selwyn, the Waikirikiri, which is the river of stones, you can have 70 cumecs coming out of the foothills. By the time it's come a short distance down the plains, it's dry because all of the water has seeped out into the groundwater. And so that's one of the challenges that we've got with the Canterbury Plains. And to illustrate that, am I pressing? It's useful. And so that was just again a little bit of a diagram of where we were. But this is just an example. This is the Rakaia River and the abundance of water. And this is unfortunately what the Selwyn looks like, as the Waikirikiri is the river of stones. And so all our coastal rivers in Canterbury are actually ephemeral rivers that go dry. And so that's one of the things we're trying to debate. In Canterbury, as I say, we've got all these massive rivers. So what we're trying to do is find areas where we can do storage, and we can actually try and relieve the pressure on the smaller rivers and the groundwater in between all of the big rivers by very efficiently using water from these massive water sources that we have. And so we've been working to try and achieve that. The challenge that we have, and this is what's been worked on by the Zone Committee, is that with land use, we have had intensification, and this is a map that predominantly reflects nutrients. On the Canterbury Plains, in this area here, it's predominantly nitrogen. A red indicates that there's more nitrates than the catchment can handle, and that we need to pull that back. An orange is indicating that we're actually we're nearing our limits and we don't want to go over them, so we don't want to do any more. And where it's green, it's actually saying no, actually we're actually looking after the water quality reasonably well. It's not hard to imagine that this is the hill country, this is very lightly farmed, and the good thing is that even though I take at the bottom, all of these rivers have incredibly low nutrient loads. So very often no nitrogen, no phosphorus in them except when they're in flood. And the Hurunu is a special case because they had a sub-regional plan that didn't quite fit the map, so they're a different colour, but they have their own issues. And one of the things that we inherited as commissioners from the previous council in the mayoral form, and it's really good to see Sam Rock here as the mayor of Selwyn, is that they wanted to do with the Canterbury Water Management Strategy a different way of looking at how we did water management in Canterbury. And so we divided Canterbury up into 10 different zones. And the reason that you do that is every catchment, every river, and every sub-catchment is different. And so you need the local community, the local runanga, you need everybody here helping you to achieve what you need to achieve at a local level. And so we've tried to devolve as much of the responsibility that we've had as governance within Environment Canterbury down to the local level so that they take control of what's happening. They can understand the need for economic gain, social gain, environmental gain, and cultural gain. And that's the basis of the zone. And I will now pass over to John to talk about the local nuance and how the local zone did that, and you've heard quite a bit of that already this morning. John.
Thank you, Excellencies. I'm really privileged to have you here and to be able to talk about what we are doing within Canterbury, and from my perspective, more in respect of what we're doing within the Selwyn-Waihora catchment and what we're achieving as a community. Our first slide here talks about co-governance, and you've had some of those conversations already today at the marae, looking at the wetland, talking about the aspirations of Runanga, of what they believed the lake, the Takiwā was, and their aspiration to what it can be and will be into the future. And the joined up nature that we have in those conversations and how we bring that about. For me, I joined this process about 7 years ago within the Selwyn-Waihora zone as the Canterbury Water Management Strategy was taking off, and we began a journey to understand what the issues were for us in this catchment. Not just through my lens or your lens or someone else's lens, but to sit down as a community. We spent tens upon tens of hours with hundreds upon hundreds of people, identifying the issues that we as individuals believed we faced within the community. And once we'd identified those issues, we then sat down and looked for solutions. We didn't necessarily agree to the solutions, but we had enough ideas to then put together within scenarios and packages, do some science, do some regression, and find out what we could achieve, at what cost to communities, at what cost to individuals, or alternatively, what cost to the environment if we didn't do things. That was a period and a process that took us 2, 3, 4 years as we debated, as we argued, as we drew lines in the sand, as we crossed our arms, as we walked outdoors, came back together. A very, very robust process of the community coming together and beginning to understand what our problems were and what we might achieve to right the wrongs. This slide I put up because it really does identify Coyote Katai. Mountains at the top, Te Waihora at the bottom, And the two underlying issues that we really had were increased eutrophication, popping up in our streams and our springs and in Te Waihora, and the over-allocation or abstraction of water. So anything that falls upon the plains at the top in those unconfined gravels washes through. So if we throw extra nutrients, all those kinds of things, wash through with extra irrigation, rainfall and the like, into our groundwater. Groundwater flows along, and then here at the bottom of the catchment, we see it popping up into our lowland streams. So one, that gives us very high nutrients in those streams, but equally if we over-abstract, as we were, then our streams begin to dry up because we don't have enough pressure to bring that water back up into the environment. So two things that we really had to work on, aside from all the other things that sat around us. A wicked problem. We could solve one with one set of outcomes, but not necessarily other. So bringing about balance. A good friend of mine, Ken Taylor, who was chief scientist at Lincoln, said to me one day in the middle of the process, Te Waihora is non-linear. Poke it somewhere and something will happen, but as a scientist I cannot tell you what will happen. And that's something I've held very dearly. Individuals can have ideas of, if we just did this or just did that, we would achieve an outcome. This diagram represents our goals, our pathways, and what success will look like, but nothing's linear. No one action achieves an outcome. They are interlinked, they are interwoven, and we end up with a package that brings us together to achieve an outcome. But it's not simple. It is really, really complicated in bringing together the healthy outcomes that we want while still maintaining thriving communities and sustainable economies. So where did we land up? We landed up with an idea and a load within the catchment that we wanted to see achieved that would start to bring the waka about. Our Runanga representatives had a vision of a lake that was pristine, but also understood that to achieve those outcomes, they would take time. So half the conversation is, we want it there and we want it now. The other half is, but we know that it's intergenerational, and if we see the waka coming about, we are beginning to understand that it is achievable. So some of the regulatory tools we put into place were farm land use consents, limits on nitrogen losses, and within this catchment, not only a good practice limit, but a further reduction to achieve the outcomes that we need to then achieve the environmental outcomes. Stock exclusion rules, fencing of stock, riparian planting. So a bunch of statutory and non-statutory. If we talk the non-statutory, which is just the fencing and riparian planting and the good things that we might and should do on farms, we're talking about $500 million for farmers and the community to spend to achieve an outcome, which is outside the rules. So this is not a cheap process or an easy process. It will and it does take time. One of the things, and we've mentioned it, so I'll go over it reasonably quickly. I'm not sure how a harbour ends up in Te Waihora, but it's there. Our cultural landscape values management area around Te Waihora is particularly important in how we converse with our farmers, converse with our community, begin to understand what mahinga kai is, what kaitiaki is, the values that we need to be aspiring to and achieving. And one of the most important things we've done is, as we've said before, put those land management officers in who can have a conversation about the environment, about culture, and understand the economies and economics of farming and community. A really, really good point to take home anywhere we go. You cannot legislate for success. You cannot write rules and just say do it. It doesn't happen. It kind of happens. Then we end up in courts and all sorts of things happen. The conversation is the really important thing in this process within the Canterbury Water Management Strategy. It is the collaboration, it is the arguments to the point where we all understand and start to move together. said one of the major constraints we had was the over-abstraction of water from the environment. Central Plains was put into place and consented before the CWMS came into play, but it's become a cornerstone of this catchment and this community's move towards an improvement of the environment. In its first year of running, in its stage 1, I think it was something like 80 million cubic metres of water was transferred from groundwater to surface water and saved water takes. That's the equivalent of 2 Wellington harbours of water that was not abstracted from the ground. And our monitoring at the bottom of the catchment was showing that we had an immediate effect on groundwater. And with the last couple of wet years we've seen our springs flowing, our streams flowing, and all those things we were looking to achieve, we're beginning to achieve. So if there's a message from me in this, irrigation is painted as bad by some. For us, there are a whole bunch of co-benefits. We have the productive value of irrigation. We have the consents and rules that reduce the ability of farmers to further pollute the environment. We have rules and regulations in place. We have the environmental outcomes of restocking those aquifers, boosting them up, getting our lowland streams and our springs running. We have the environmental impact of planting and riparian management. So for us, when we talk about irrigation, it's not just irrigation for productive values, it's for the total environment. So a core part of achieving the outcomes in our catchment has been that transfer from groundwater to surface and seawater water. So just to summarise, the Zone Committee, when we started the process or got to a point, our target was to restore the Maori of Te Waihora while maintaining the prosperous land-based economy and thriving communities. And I genuinely believe we're doing that. And we're going to hear from Lincoln some of the innovation that's coming on. Really, really exciting stuff. It's the ability to have our cake and eat it. It's the ability to give us the interventions and the mechanisms to maintain our productive values whilst improving our environment. So thank you again for the opportunity to present to you. I'm really excited about what we are doing and what we're achieving in this catchment.